YouTube squad, spiritual family, cheers, what's up? Alright, back at you, coming live from my vehicle with a cup full of espresso and a zest for life. Alright, so I want to talk to you guys about a couple of things. First thing, I wanted to share an analogy with you guys that I heard recently. I heard this like a month ago, and it's just been, I don't know if you guys ever hear something and it kind of like, when you first hear it, you're like, oh, that's interesting, you know, but it doesn't really sink in, and then you spend some time thinking about it, and the more you think about it, the more it's almost like a blossoming of information within you. Like this one thing can it's like a seed that just like blossoms into all these interesting realizations. And so this is one of those analogies. It's been like that for me. It's been sort of applying to a lot of different things going on in my life, and I feel like me having heard it was not an accident, you know. So very simple one, and you may have heard it before too, but so basically goes like this. It's very simple. Is a boat out on the water. We say a boat is safest when it's docked, you know, when it's sitting there not moving. But boats aren't meant to sit there in the dock their whole lives. They're meant to go places. So a boat, when it's out on the open waters, if it were to sink, it's not the water around the boat that sinks the boat. It's only the water that gets into the boat that sinks the boat. So the boat stays afloat so long as the water around the boat doesn't get into the boat to the point that there's a density equilibrium happens, and then the boat can sink, all right? Without getting too technical, try and stay in my lane here. So, but I think y'all catch the meaning of this analogy, right? It's not what's going on around you in life that takes you out. It's how much of that you let in. That's what takes you out. So I started thinking about this. I started applying this to like the last relationship I had, which was something that nearly took me out. I'm very blessed to be alive to tell the story. I learned a lot from it. You know, I don't have regrets. I'm at a point where I have a lot of gratitude for having gone through all of this pain, all this experience, because now that enough time has elapsed that I've grieved and I've moved on and I've processed this stuff, it's basically turned into an enormous lesson or series of lessons, and it's grown me as a person, and now I have that much more to offer in this area. It's given me a lot of wisdom. Basically the pain that I endured through this experience ultimately gave me a lot of wisdom, but it was, you know, I could have easily died. I mean, I don't want to get too detailed about some of the stuff that went down, but it was that serious to where I could have very easily ended up dead over it and not had anything to share with anybody. But for whatever reason, I think God kept me alive. God kept me. He protected me throughout this event, which was, you know, I was dealing with a very charismatic narcissist who was very intelligent and knew everything about me because I was so open and vulnerable, and used every possible bit of information and vulnerability I had against me to try and destroy me, both directly and indirectly through slander and ruining my reputation, and trying to destroy my self-esteem and my self-image, and just convince me, you know, my family is the reason I'm the way I am, and I'm a hopeless case. I'm never going to be lovable because my parents did such a bad job. I mean, just stuff that came out of this person's mouth you wouldn't believe. Anyhow, it nearly took me out. And the reason it nearly took me out was because of how much of what was going on outside of me I was allowing to get in me. How much of what came out of her mouth I allowed in my mind, in my heart. And ultimately I allowed some of her opinions, some things that she just had to say. I allowed those things into myself to the point that they informed me and even changed the way I see myself, changed my own experience of being me and my own sense of self-worth and self-esteem, and to the point where it started to sink me like a ship being sunk because of what I was allowing in. And not just in the relationship, but I look back, I think about the job that I had, working in a very busy, chaotic bar, serving drinks for hours and hours and hours on end. Just the type of energy I was exposing myself to. It's like being, like, if I'm a ship, to use that analogy, you know, every time I went to that job, it was like going out on very rough waters. And the opportunities for water to get in and sink me were constant, you know, constant opportunities for that in those environments. And I wasn't always spiritually balanced or contained enough to not allow these things in. And so things got in. And then furthermore, you know, when you consume alcohol, when you consume mind-altering substances, in a sense, to follow with this analogy, that's almost just like taking a bucket and just pouring some of that water outside the ship into the ship, like on purpose, just like let's sink this fucker. You know, that if you're drinking and doing enough drugs, and the corn and chasing women and all of these dopamine, you know, addictive habits, self-pleasure seeking stuff that we do, where we actually harm our own bodies deliberately, you know, that's like you just consciously sinking your own ship slowly over time. Like, yeah, maybe it's, you know, I don't know how many buckets of water it's going to take to sink the ship. It might take years, but if you keep doing that every day, you know, that ship's going to sink. You know, that's how I look at drinking and engaging in toxic behaviors and toxic substances, toxic relationships, all of this stuff. So yeah, this analogy's been on my mind a lot. And as of late, I've realized that I've been letting certain things get to me. I've been starting to kind of struggle, like the honeymoon phase of retention, where it's like, wow, I just didn't know I could have this much energy. I didn't know I could heal this fast. I didn't know I could be so, you know, jubilant and glowing and have this many people like want to give me things and be so magnetic and have just so many different girls like trying to come after. I mean, all of this stuff that happens, you know, when you go on a consistent streak of retention, you know, but it's like a lot of this stuff, you know, those benefits, they really mean little to nothing to me at this point. And like I've said before, this is all about getting closer to God. It's all about self-development, self-love, becoming the highest version of yourself and getting closer to God and realizing what your purpose is here on earth and then acting accordingly. And that's what this is really about. And as soon as it becomes about anything other than that, it starts to become very difficult or even painful, you know, in a way. So what I've been experiencing is like I've become more and more irritable lately, more short-tempered, a little bit more serious, just generally kind of like annoyed a lot. And I've realized like the reason that's happening is because I'm allowing certain things in my external to affect my internal. And that's my responsibility at the end of the day. Like, I have to be able to accept the fact that I live in a world that's full of nonsense. It's full of lies and deception. It's full of different poisons. It's full of different mind games and psychological operations and corruption. And I mean, it's so full of this stuff that we could basically say like we live in a layer of hell, so to speak, where aspects of heaven are accessible here, but really this place is pretty well effed. So to just be an acceptance of that and realize that you're not necessarily a victim because you have the ability to have dominion over this. You know what I mean? Like your inner experience of the world, like you technically can have total dominion over that, to the extent that none of the stuff going on around you actually affects you anymore. And some people might say that's selfish, or that's insensitive, or that's, you know, you're avoiding feeling things. Well, not necessarily, because you can be feeling it all. You can feel these things. You can have feelings. That's fine. But to let them change the way you look at the world, the way you look at yourself, the way you go about doing anything, the way you interact with other living beings, you know, when it gets to the point that you're less kind, you're less patient, you know, you're less reliable, you're less focused, whatever it is, that's when you know it's like this stuff's gotten into you to the point that now, like, you're at risk of capsizing as a ship, let's say. So for me lately, guys, one of the big things that gets to me is, like, they've been doing the stuff they do in the sky. I don't want to be too specific so I don't get, you know, my channel cut. But you guys know they'll be manipulating the weather, and they're spraying stuff, and, you know, it's off and on. They're on a schedule. I'm a sun fanatic, as you guys know. I like to be in the sun every day. Every day. I mean, I make a point of organizing my life so that I never have a 9-to-5 job. I make sure, this is part of what I like about being a musician and being my own boss. And then if I do take on work, I usually take on, like, work in fine dining. So I'm working at night, so I can be outside in the sun during the day. Like, I do all my coaching and my training in the morning, my teaching. I always try to keep a block of time in the middle of the day open so I can go get in the sun. Like, that's how important this is to me. It's like I schedule my life around the sun. But lately, this week, I live in sunny Arizona. It should be sunny every day, especially this kind of year, but they've been doing their thing. And so it's strange overcast, why my throat's raspy, because I don't know what, you know, the air quality is trashed from what they're doing. If you know, you know, okay? You either think I'm crazy or you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this stuff, like, it gets to me. And I do my best not to let it get to me. And at a certain point, the realization I always come to is like, okay, well, I'm dealing with something enormous in scale. And I can't really talk to any of the pilots. I can't talk to I've called the FAA about it, you guys, actually, literally. I mean, I've done some serious research. I've talked to public officials. I've tried to take, like, action. I've tried to organize, you know, community efforts against this. And nothing, you guys. So it's like, it's gotten to a point where it's like, people just don't want to hear about it. They don't want to be reminded. I mean, as I'm speaking right now, there's a big X. There's a big X in the sky. And the sun's totally blotted out today. So I could let this ruin my day, right? I could just say, well, all I wanted to do today was lay in the sun, and I don't get to. So now I'm having a bad day. But that's me allowing the external to affect my internal. And when it comes down to it, I do have the ability to regulate my internal. I do have the ability to decide to have a really good day, regardless of what's going on. See, I can feel something about it. I can look up and notice it and say, well, that's wrong. That's just morally wrong. That sucks. But you know what? I'm going to keep a smile on my face. I'm going to stay focused. I'm gonna keep my attention on what can I do today. Well, maybe I don't get to go sunbathe like I wanted to. There's a million other things I can do. So I'm gonna focus on that. And that's my way of not letting this in, right? That's just one example. Could be stuff that's going on at work. Could be stuff going on in your relationship, with your family, with your roommates, you know, anything. Anything outside of yourself that's outside of your immediate control. If we are letting those things affect us, we're prisoners, man. We're in bondage. We're not really free. And we haven't really gotten anywhere worth getting spiritually, because I think that's the whole deal with spiritual cultivation, is you get to a point where you are master of your own domain, and you have a level of surrender to God the Father, to where you're not stressed out about trying to save the world or save anybody, for that matter, because you understand who it is that really does the saving, and you're just here regulating yourself so that you can be a positive force in the world. And yeah, it's just like that. So all right, I think that's it for me. I'm going to try and make a video under 20 minutes for a change. I have another one that's still uploading. It's been uploading for days. Hopefully it uploads today. I don't even remember what it's about. But all right, I love you guys. Stay the course, man. I'm pushing. I'll be at 10 months soon. Before I know it's going to be a year. It's crazy, man. It keeps going. It keeps going. It's not like you get to a point and you just, no, it's a ongoing deal. So keep it up, guys. All right, peace.